Welcome to the Weekly Dose Podcast, your one-stop shop for the weekly news in incretin mimetic therapies, with your host, man on the Mounjaro, Dave Knapp. Welcome to a special edition of On the Pen, the Weekly Dose, your one-stop shop for all things incretin mimetic news for the week, whether that's Ozempic, Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Mounjaro, or Zepbound. That's what we cover here on this podcast, and I'm so thrilled to bring you a special edition today as we cover a absolutely bonkers day in the world of Novo Nordisk news. So yesterday, Novo Nordisk had their annual Capital Markets Day, and we learned a absolute ton, just a treasure trove about their pipeline medications, as well as some new information about existing treatments that they have that have new indications, as well as higher dosing. And there's just a ton to get into. So we're going to get into it right away. But before we do, if you're on the podcast, would you consider leaving us a 5-star rating and review? That really helps get the message out about this if you enjoy incretin mimetic news. If you are on the YouTube channel, or if you're watching on any of the other social media platforms, know that for the month of March, all the paid membership dues that I receive and all the super chats and gifts that I receive between YouTube and TikTok, 10% of that number I am going to gift back to one member that I will select at random, one of the paid members of YouTube or one of the paid members of TikTok, to help them out this month to defray some of the cost of their medication, just finding a way to give back to the community that gives so much to me. So that is where 10% of the gifts that you give this month are going. I just wanted to let you all know that off the top. Again, to receive that, it's going to be a completely random choice of mine to one of the paid members, either on YouTube or TikTok. But getting into this awesome news about the Capital Markets Day for Novo Nordisk, we've got lots to cover in the world of Cagrisema, their new Amycretin therapy, some of the new indications for Semaglutide, some of the higher doses. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Some exciting things to talk about. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about today is the fact that there is actually a dual agonist. So we talk all the time about how Mounjaro is different. Zepbound and Mounjaro, tirzepatide as a molecule is different because it's a twin cretin. It's a dual agonist. It's acting on GLP-1 and GIP. More predominantly, it's acting on GIP. Well, did you know that Novo Nordisk also in phase 1 trials has their version of a dual agonist? Now, this is going to be the same thing as tirzepatide from the perspective of acting on GLP-1 and GIP. Now, they did make mention in this discussion about how they will not bring something new to the market that already exists unless it offers something else. So the unique thing about this specific molecule is that they are planning to have it be a once monthly injection versus a once weekly injection. And this is just a super interesting approach to the marketplace, because you see that other drug manufacturers like Amgen with their monoclonal antibody GIP antagonist and GLP-1 medication is looking to deliver that in less frequent dosing. Now, this brings up a whole host of issues like side effects. If you're dealing with side effects from these medications and it's a once monthly dose, there's no real turning back after you take that initial dose. So that is some really interesting news. We'll see how that one continues to develop. That will be an interesting one to follow. On the subject of tirzepatide, we've got some upcoming clinical trials where they will be looking at Cagrisema. We've talked about Cagrisema on this channel before. That would be a dual agonist as well, but we're talking about cagrilintide, which is an amylin agonist, coupled with semaglutide, which is a GLP-1 agonist. So this one is pitted to show up to 25% weight loss. That's well above where the tirzepatide studies are currently. So you can see sort of the timeline for some of their upcoming redefined trials. or rather not the timeline, but rather the different indications that they're looking at. We have a 3,400 participant, 68-week study in the REDEFINE 1 study, which is looking at monotherapies and placebos against Cagrisema in the endpoint of weight loss. We have another weight loss study with 1,200 participants in another 68-week trial looking at simply just Cagrisema versus placebo. We've got 7,000 participant trial looking at reduction in MACE events. We've got REDEFINE 4, which is actually a head-to-head trial against tirzepatide. So Cagrisema in a 72-week, no participants lose in that trial. You're either getting Semaglutide, or you're either getting Cagrisema or you're getting tirzepatide in a 72-week trial to pit it against the weight loss. And that'll be an interesting one to watch. And then our REDEFINE 5 trial out of East Asia, which will have 330 participants in a 68-week trial versus the highest current dose of semaglutide at 2.4 milligrams, showing superiority in weight loss for Cagrisema. So some really interesting things to watch from Cagrisema, and I'll get into the timelines of these medications and when we can expect this kind of stuff to wrap up. But you can kind of see along the bottom there that the 3 out of the last 3 are scheduled to end in 2025, where late 2024 is where we'll get the end point of the REDEFINE 1 and the REDEFINE 2. We're also looking at MASH and alcoholic liver disease, obstructive sleep apnea, heart failure, and chronic kidney disease. Again, some of the same things that we're looking at in the tirzepatide trials, where Novo Nordisk is hoping to show Cagrisema as being a superior molecule. So that'll be interesting to watch. On the topic of obesity and mortality, an interesting chart here shows us that chronic disease really shortens life expectancy. And so if you have a BMI between 40 and 50, you have a 50% chance of reaching age 70. That is an astounding number. And it just underscores the importance of the continual development of these medications, as not everybody responds to every molecule equally. And it's going to be very important that companies like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly continue to push each other to advance obesity medicine forward, not only in the efficacy of the medicine, but the availability of the medicine, the insurance side, the accessibility of the medication. So these are the things that we're going to continue to cover and advocate for on this channel. We got some information on another pipeline medication. This is a CBR1 inverse agonist. This is an interesting one here, and I'm going to stumble through this, but this is an interesting novel approach to obesity medicine. So this specific medicine is called Manmanent, and it is an oral small molecule CB1 inverse agonist. And this is basically what we saw in mice after 21 days was a 3.5% reduction in body weight in 28 days. Again, this is a rodent study. Getting a little bit deeper into that specific medication, you can see some unique things about how it works. So I don't know a ton about this other than to know that it acts on the cannabinoid receptors, the CB1 cannabinoid receptors, and it's got amazing potential in rodents. So you see here how on the far right-hand side of the screen, the control group kind of stayed at 0. And then as the dose was given in higher increments, you saw after 35 days, over 30% weight loss. This is an astounding number, which they'll have to obviously hone in for human trials. But when you think about using this as a novel mechanism of weight loss therapy, also known as a monotherapy, or using this in conjunction in smaller doses with current and existing therapies, this has the potential to be absolutely huge. So I don't know much about the cannabinoid system, so we're just going to call this the anti-munchie pill. If cannabis gives you munchies, then this has got to be the anti-munchie, right? The antidote. So we'll learn more about this one together, but really fantastic information as it was. I'm getting kind of stuffy here. Really fantastic information about this new therapy, and that'll be an exciting one to learn about together, and we definitely will. Some interesting news about semaglutide. So just talking about long-term outcomes for people using semaglutide, which is Friday, and we're Friday, March 8th is the date today. And today we got a huge announcement that the FDA went ahead and approved the 2.4 milligram dose of Wegovy in the prescribing for reducing major major cardiovascular events in people with heart failure. So this is awesome news for expanding the labeling of these medications. This is the first of many to come, not only for semaglutide, but for tirzepatide in the future. You know, we already talked about how in both molecules, we're looking at the potential for approvals in obstructive sleep apnea, kidney disease. We saw the flow trials come out earlier this week for semaglutide. The hits just keep on coming. So much good news for these medication and label expansion. But the use of 2.4 milligram use of Wegovy actually reduced a lot of really negative health outcomes. So you saw a 15% reduction in cardiovascular death. You saw that 9.4% sustained weight loss over 4 years. There was a 22% risk reduction of kidney endpoints in this study. Just major 18% risk reduction of heart failure. I mean, just so many good things. And the most exciting thing is there was a 73% reduction in people developing type 2 diabetes. So when you think of like a prophylaxis against developing diabetes, this is a really exciting data point to look at. If you're teetering on the edge with insulin resistance, that number shows you that semaglutide 2.4 may be a great option for avoiding going into full-on type 2 diabetes. And obviously the 19% reduction in all-cause death, that is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. The number that jumps out to me is that 9.4% sustained weight loss. That's an interesting one. If I'm reading that correctly, I would expect that number to be much higher. So we'll have to dig a little bit deeper into that number, but very, very real world data here to look at and to just marvel at the potential of these medications to improve health outcomes across people with cardiovascular disease. Super, super, super exciting news. So we learned also a little bit of information about how long people are staying on Wegovy. We learned that it's mostly women on Wegovy in the United States, 81%. In fact, that is a massive number. So hopefully we'll see those numbers shift over the years, and we'll see more men understand the benefits of this in these molecules. Hopefully we can help accomplish that here on the pen. Average of 47 years old, average BMI of 38. Patients on Wegovy with type 2 diabetes diagnosis is 8%. So most of them probably on Ozempic rather than the weight loss version. Myself as a diabetic, I don't have access to weight loss medication. So it's either Ozempic or MOUNJARO. For me, I cannot get access to Wegovy or Zepbound. And you look at a staggering number with comorbidities, and then the average Wegovy stay time was greater than 6 months, and that's despite the issues with supply. So very interesting numbers there. You obviously see the improvement in the persistency of use versus the previous generation of weight loss medication from Novo Nordisk, which was Saxenda. So awesome news for, just a drug that people can tolerate for a lot longer. And that is really good news. So some other interesting information here is the timelines of all these medications. So you see that the SELECT trial for semaglutide 2.4 in the cardiovascular risk, we just talked about how today they announced that they received that regulatory decision. So that's great news. The STEP, the heart failure with preserved ejection fraction study, we will see hopefully some more regulatory action on that. The previous one was about cardiovascular outcomes. Oral semaglutide, it looks like we will see about halfway through the year. And this is not necessarily new news. They've kind of told us this along the way, but oral semaglutide at 25 and 50 milligrams for obesity, they're expecting later this year. The semaglutide 7.2 milligram study, and this was interesting. They're hoping that phase 3 wraps up early part of 2025, and hopefully late 2025, we would have that option for those of us who need a higher dose of semaglutide to respond. Same as Cagrisema, so same kind of timeline of those medications dropping. But some interesting news about semaglutide was that we saw 20 to 21% weight loss at that dose, and the safety and tolerability maintained about the same level as the lower doses. So that's really good news for semaglutide. When you think about, a new higher level to go, more stairs to climb, as Dr. Rosen talked about, that's really good news that could be available in 2025 at some point, and that's getting up to tirzepatide level weight loss. And at the same time, you'll see Cagrisema dropping, which we're seeing, similar numbers to some of the numbers that we've heard about retatrutide. Although retatrutide, we're hearing more and more from Eli Lilly that their target is around 30%. So we'll see if they can get there. But obviously, we know that retatrutide has some challenges with the glucagon receptor agonism and increase in heart rate and heart arrhythmias. So we'll see if they can get the dosages right and get to that 30% number. But Cagrisema will be available in 2025 at around 25% weight loss, which is awesome. Phase 2 trials wrapping up in 2024 for the CB1R inverse agonist that we talked about. That is the anti-munchie pill. The obesity phase 2 trial for the dual agonist GIP GLP-1 tirzepatide once monthly tirzepatide counterpart from Novo Nordisk, which will wrap up phase 2 in the middle of 2025. So you'd probably see if there's an appetite for that once monthly. We'll see if that one makes it to market. By that time, Cagrisema and high dose semaglutide may negate the need for that one, but the once a month may be something to drop to compete with Amgen if they bring their monoclonal antibody to market at once monthly or once quarterly or once annually, depending on what they come up with there. And then obviously we have some more phase 2 trials coming out. And the interesting one that we didn't cover and I didn't give you a slide on was this oral amycretin. So there is a once daily oral and there's a once weekly injectable amycretin coagonist. And that is different than Cagrisema. So this is supposedly a new molecule, so not combining semaglutide, but it is a coagonist with incretin. And we don't even know which incretin. We don't know if it's GLP-1. We don't know if it's GIP, but it's going to be a combination of amylin agonist like Cagrisema and some form of incretin agonist. So that'll be an interesting one to see. The oral version of this amycretin in phase 1 is just blowing things out of the water. So we could see some really interesting things happen with this oral amycretin and then the once weekly injection. Obviously, we may be getting to a medication that can compete and potentially even surpass what we're seeing with retatrutide. So the point being, we're seeing a major increase in the efficacy of what medications can do, and we're getting closer and closer to what people are able to see with bariatric surgery results. And so I think that's a really exciting time in obesity medicine. It's really exciting to hear some of the things that Novo Nordisk is doing, because we have a huge focus on Eli Lilly as I started on MOUNJARO, and that's kind of the things that I learned about. But when you talk about Cagrisema and its 25% weight loss coming sometime in hopefully 2025, we've got semaglutide in high doses coming in 2025, which have dose at the high dose can rival tirzepatide. We just have really good opportunity for expansion of accessibility to these medications. And, this all feels like it's way far away, but here we are, just a year ago, we were talking about when will tirzepatide be approved for weight loss, and now we're already talking about shortages in Zepbound. So time has a way of going very quickly and getting away from us. So this stuff will be here in no time, and we're going to stay on top of all of it here. Thank you for my friend who contributed so much of this, virtually all of this information from this call, who listened in and kind of shared the information with me. I appreciate that. You know who you are. You don't want any any credit here, but you know who you are, and I really appreciate it. There is one other thing that we have not talked about that I wanted to save for last, because this is maybe one of the more exciting things that they're doing. So we talk so much about retatrutide on this channel because retatrutide is sort of the king of the hill of the medicines that we know about in clinical trials right now, although Cagrisema isn't far behind. One of the announcements that we got from this video call was that there is a triple agonist, a triagonist in the works from Novo Nordisk, and it will be a combination of the new amylin that they're coming up with, perhaps the one that will be in this Amycretin, and incretin, whether it's GLP-1 and GIP plus amylin. I think that we can expect that it will be some sort of amylin agonist coupled with GLP-1, and maybe even this molecule will come potentially without the heart issues that may accompany for some users retatrutide. TBD on all this. All this stuff is in clinical trials, and so much of it we'll have to wait to see how it plays out. We'll have to see if, potentially this triagonist would be as good as retatrutide from a weight loss standpoint, but will it be as good at melting off that liver fat? Because we know in retatrutide, it's sort of that glucagon component that seems to really help aid in that. And we also see that with survodutide from Boehringer Ingelheim. It's that glucagon component that really seems to be good for liver disease. This maybe will be an option for somebody who doesn't struggle with liver disease, but needs that weight loss and maybe has cardiovascular risk if they don't want the heart amped up. We'll have to see. TBD on all this, but exciting news from Novo Nordisk today. I am so excited about the future of obesity medicine. If you enjoyed this update, make sure you leave the podcast a 5-star rating and review. Make sure you hit that bell, and hit that sub on YouTube so we can stay in touch with each other with all the late, great information that's coming out about this medicine. We'll stay on top of it all. Until next time, we'll catch you on the pen. Thanks for joining. Appreciate y'all.